Welcome back to another episode of Flawless Plan Garage, where today's video is brought to you by the letter F, as in fit, because we're going to attempt to fit a 6.6 liter turbo diesel Duramax engine and Allison transmission into this, my 1994 Buick Roadmaster station wagon. I'm already pretty sure that it's not actually going to fit. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut the floor out, which is going to involve probably some more disassembly. Then we're going to set this thing down and see how bad the situation really is. It's probably pretty bad. All right, roll the ugliness. I've heard of this Duramax juggling. But here's the trick. If you're going to be tearing the top off of a Duramax to fit it into a 94 Roadmaster, the key is to remove several hundred bolts, then remove several hundred wires, then a few dozen fuel lines, all of the front end accessories, and the real key is to wait a year and a half and then edit the video. But in all seriousness, the reason I was tearing this down in this way was, this motor had 360,000 miles on it. I drove it over 700 miles home in the truck before I pieced it out and pulled the motor out of it. And it ran well, made good boost, didn't burn oil, got reasonably acceptable fuel economy. But I really wanted to make sure I could put my eyes on the inside of the motor and get a look at everything before it went into the wagon. And I wanted to have the heads cleaned up and any work that they needed done as well. Now the local head shop that I used took a look at them, did a quick skim just to put a new surface on them and proclaimed them in great shape. They said typically the Duramaxes they see, anything in the 300,000 to 500,000 range, frankly, doesn't really even always need a valve job, and mine was in pretty good shape. So we're just going with it as is. But overall, it really came apart fairly well. We'll see if it goes so well when it comes to putting it back together. And if I was going to cut out that beautiful floor to make room for that gigantic Allison transmission, I was really going to have to get all the way down to the firewall, which meant removing the entire dashboard and all of the underlying layers underneath it. This was not a trivial task, but we'll get into a few of the things I learned along the way as I went deep into this late model B-body dashboard. Okay, so this bracket that goes up under the dash is actually slotted. So once you pull the steering column loose, the bracket can slide off. So I removed a bolt from back here that let me take the entire lower column bracket off, but probably didn't have to. Probably just taking it loose would have been enough to be able to slide this out. As you can see, this front plastic piece of the dash is riveted to this brace here. So the brace needs to come with the front plastic part of the dash. All right, this is mostly for my own purposes. Before I take this plastic dash piece out and unclip all the wiring, I want to make a careful note of the routing of the harness and where all the connections happen. This is a typical problem for me. Get a little too gung-ho when pulling this stuff out, and I've done enough of this that I know, where to connect the harnesses and stuff back together so you can get it all to work. But the routing, like the actual routing of where it clips in and where it goes, a lot of times that's trial and error, because a lot of times it's only going to fit one way, and I can't always tell what that way is on my first try, because of course it's usually several months later. I always get a big kick out of this. This is basically the same headlight switch that's in my 1960s Corvairs. GM really didn't change that headlight switch for about 40 years. It's hard to tell on this headlight side where it actually goes. And of course, there's an aftermarket alarm. I hate aftermarket alarms so much. All right, I was frustrated by this one wire which goes up into the kind of cowl area somehow. I thought it maybe went into the door. You can see the door comes through here. That's not what it is. It's the power antenna wire, or the just antenna wire, which comes through right here. So that's not going to be too bad. I'll just lube this up a little bit, push it through, and then that dash panel should be able to come out. All right, apparently the cowl on a B-body GM vehicle carries like suspension loads or something, because there were, I think, 16 fasteners holding that on, which is insane. But nevertheless, eventually you get this cover off, look down inside, there's your fresh air intake, and voila. Oh, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is the firewall. So far, my rough measurements suggest that I need to cut about 3 inches up into this to move the tunnel up that much higher, and then bring it out quite a ways and make it much larger here as well. It looks like that might be doable on the HVAC box. So let's go take a look at that. So if this thing is going to be a family road trip vehicle, it's got to have excellent air conditioning and heat. And frankly, the GM cars of this vintage pretty much had that, especially in the front unit. This is the back side of the HVAC unit. So you've got the air conditioning evaporator core coming in here, the heater core coming in here. And this is the part that's really in my way, because this is what sits directly above the trans tunnel and right up against the firewall. So you can see here that what this is like the heater distribution box that blows down onto your feet. Some vacuum pods here that control the movement of everything, and then a little flapper door that can open. I don't want to break anything, so I'm not going to open it right now. But this flapper door opens up to direct the air down at your feet. But this would suggest to me that maybe I could rework this a little bit. So if I need 2 or 3 more inches of space, might be a way to kind of cut this thing up. Maybe move that outlet and this whole flapper door doohickey in here. Move that pivot point, move the outlet up, make something simple out of sheet metal maybe that would kind of duct the air down and out, up a little higher. I was concerned that I might have to junk this entire thing and then go with like a vintage air unit or something compact up front. But actually, I think this is not going to be too terrible. It's really just an air duct on this end. It's nothing critical in the HVAC box. It's kind of encouraging. Now that depends, of course, on whether or not have to actually cut over into here. This would be where the heater core is. I strongly suspect that I cannot cut into this box and reshape anything because the heater core almost certainly, occupies that entire space right there. So we'll see, but I really do think this was the bulk of where the trans tunnel is going to interfere. More things that are in the way. This heat shield. Another one to take off over there. Then I think our underbody for the transmission tunnel will be clear and ready to cut. So to get measurements for this first attempt, I really just laid the engine and transmission onto the front cross member in the chassis. I did some minimal cutting so that I could basically just lay the oil pan right down on the cross member and start to get a rough idea of what it would take to actually fit this motor and transmission in. I noticed right away when I set it in there that the oil pan to the ground was giving good clearance. So, height-wise, I was in pretty good shape that way as far as ground clearance was concerned. And then I started making these rough cuts to get the trans tunnel out so I could see what challenges were in store with the body to get it all the way set down. And this is when I learned that plasma cutters are amazing, but there are things they won't cut through, and whatever seam sealer GM was using in the 90s is one of those things. I've been putting that off for months. Not because it was really that hard, but that scared me. That was a beautiful floor that I just hacked very amateurly and for what I hope turns out to be a good reason. Sorry if it seems hazy. It's only because there's a serious haze here after doing all that cutting. All right. Let's try our mating ritual again. Let's get rid of this guy, which of course is hooked on something. There we go. Let's see what we can do here. Let's go take a look. Oh, we're hitting on the ear, the bell housing here. What else are we going to hit? As expected, pretty good on that side. I should really take that bracket off of the transmission. At the driver's side, we have plenty of clearance. Passenger side needs a little more love. A little quick cutting there. All right, here we go again. Little bolt head we're going to catch on. We've got a ways to come down yet, so unless we can actually have the back end of the transmission be quite a bit lower, this will not be the end of the cutting. But it looks like I can still make the seat fit because I can cut, just about here. I can cut inside of this seat mount, maybe here and then over. This whole thing, this whole tunnel may need to be cut to make room for the drive shaft being larger. One more time. Nothing serious. A little bit of scraping of the sheet metal back there. Well, that's going to be fun. Look at that. That body is going to lay right on the oil filter. Sweet. Yeah, might have to bend that flange even just to set this thing down all the way. So I still have an inch or two to go over here. But we are getting close, yeah. I just let it cut the oil filter. Not the end of the world right now. Deal with that flange later. Yeah, the output flange of the transmission is now above the floor. That's awesome. Looks like it's going to self-clearance a little bit right there. That was smart. I would stop and cut that. I guess I can be smart this one time. Okay, could this be the time? Spring shaft falling in. Getting close. Have a little bit of room to the filter with my flange cut off. Not totally sure if that's going to clear on that side, but we're close. See what she does. Can't tell if I'm down or not. Apparently not. Oh, doctor! That is the sound of body on suspension. Mostly. There it is. That is it. That is the first time this body has sat down on top of the diesel. I did end up cutting a little too high there. Not super bad, but more than I needed to. Can always weld metal back in, right? We're definitely, there you go, definitely hitting the oil filter. I have to do something different with that. So now the big question is going to be, do I need to set it any further back? Or can I, rather, set it any further back than it is now? It looks to me like the answer might be yes. Looks to me like it might actually be possible. I also kind of wonder if maybe the turbo could even fit. I know, I hesitate to even speak such heresy. We'll think about it. How are we looking here? Great! Googly moogly! Look at that transmission. And I haven't really, this is already where the tunnel came up. This little surface right here. So I haven't really impinged on the footwell space to any meaningful extent. I've just made the tunnel gigantic. This is the center console now. The center console is the transmission. Goodness gracious. I don't know about this. And now we really get down to it. So the turbo is basically the tallest part of the back of the engine. And while the short block fits reasonably well with the engine just kind of laying on that stock B-body crossmember, it really doesn't fit with the turbo in place. You can see here I'm like 4 inches plus away from hitting the body all the way down on the mounts, and the turbo is solidly up into that, what do you want to call it, firewall or cowl there. And this is not something that's easy to change or move, because what's above that cowl is not just hood. You can't just cut a hole in the hood like the Hoonigan guys did on their Duramax Camaro to make this thing fit, because what's above that turbo is actually the windshield wipers and the windshield. I am really not completely sure what I'm going to do about this. I either need to significantly lower the engine or do a different turbo setup. And I think that's where I'm leaning right now, is towards some kind of front-mounted twin turbo setup rather than having the turbo in the stock location. But I do expect that width is going to be a real problem for the twin setup. So this is going to take some thought. All right, so it might seem like I don't know how this engine and transmission are going to fit in this car. And that's for a simple reason. I don't know how it's going to fit. But somehow we're going to get it there, I think. Thanks for watching. See you next time.